Barb here, and as usual, I am here tonight to help those who are struggling with type 2 diabetes figure out a strategy, figure out the steps that they need to take to truly overcome type 2 diabetes. So, I'm an internal medicine physician, I'm board certified, and I dedicate a lot of my time to helping women uh, with their struggle against type 2 diabetes, helping them overcome and to empower themselves and to really bring their numbers back to normal levels. I'm going to sound like a broken record because, it doesn't, the strategy doesn't change, the approach doesn't change. And I really want to help those who are out there baffled by the strategies, by all the things that they are trying that's not working. I want to help them break that cycle of frustration so that they can truly come around to understanding what's happening in their bodies so that they can truly conquer type 2 diabetes. And the best thing of all is that I help you to do it naturally. So I am a doctor, but I am not one of those doctors that pushes medications. I understand the want to stay away from medications, to avoid medications, but I also know that doctors like me are rare, that doctors like me are not out there that really help you to naturally do this. And that is why I decided to fill that void, because I know that there are many people who, when they're diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, the fear comes into them about starting medications, about the complications, the feeling of having to push back on your doctor about starting medications, but not really understanding the strategy to take or how you can truly overcome it yourself, get your numbers down yourself. So that is why I decided to step in and fill that void to help everyone who's struggling with type 2 diabetes understand that they can truly turn their numbers back naturally. So there is one question that I get very, very, very often, and that question is fruits. What kind of fruits can I eat? Can I even eat fruits? And so it's a question that never goes away. And so I decided tonight that we would dedicate this discussion to demystifying a lot of the questions and confusions around fruit. So I know some of you out there hear, you know what, fruit is natural, eat all the fruit that you want. And others will hear, don't eat fruit. If you have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, fruit is off limits. And number one, I think the first thing that you have to understand as someone who's struggling with type 2 diabetes and as someone who is trying to turn your numbers back naturally is you have to understand that your journey is particularly different or specifically different from somebody else who is on another journey. So, for example, what might be considered healthy for you who's struggling with high blood sugars, might not necessarily apply to someone who is without diabetes and has different health goals. So, the first thing that I want you to do is to get out of this mindset that all that health advice out there applies to you. It doesn't. If you are struggling with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, it's really important to understand that every step that you take has to be focused on your blood sugars and maintaining the proper blood sugars, right? Maintaining blood sugars, driving those blood sugars back down to normal levels. And that process does not happen overnight either. It takes work, takes consistency, and it takes understanding how to eat to maintain your blood sugars. If you're someone who is adamant that you do not want to be stuck on medications, that you don't want to end up on multiple medications, that you don't want to end up on insulin, if you are that person, then it's really important that you treat your food as medicine. And treating your food as medicine means you have to understand how to dose it, and you have to understand how to dose your fruits. So answer that first question is, if you have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, can you eat fruit? And the answer is absolutely, you can eat fruit. Fruit is good for you. Okay. So take it from me tonight. If you're someone who has been avoiding fruit altogether because you're afraid of the high blood sugars, because you're terrified of having to start medication. So now you're cutting everything out. I'm here to tell you that fruit is actually good for you, and it is something that you should have as a part of your healthy diet, and it's something that you should be using as a tool to control your blood sugars. So fruit is good. Now, for fruit is good and you can have fruit, but it's also really important to understand that you have a blood sugar problem, right? And because you have a blood sugar problem, you do have to be careful about how much fruit you're eating, right? And for some of you, that might not be new information, but this is where the confusion starts, is because you really don't understand how much to have. And to be honest, it might be very difficult to truly answer that question, particularly for you, because this is a very individualized answer or question to answer, right? If I have two, if I am working with two different women, very likely my answer to each of those women is going to be very different. And that is the problem, right? Is all this advice out there is a kind of a one size fits all. When you're trying to piece together your strategy on how you're going to conquer your type 2 diabetes, you're looking at information that's kind of a one size fits all. And the reality is, when you're trying to decide how much fruit is right for your body, how much fruit is going to nourish your body, give your body the energy that you need, then that's a very individualized question to answer. So it's definitely something that takes understanding how much your body needs. But the one thing I will say, and the one thing you have to remember, is when you are choosing how much fruit to eat, it's important to remember you have a blood sugar problem, and fruit is made of sugar, right? The sugar that fruit is made up of is fructose. So when we have a piece of fruit, it's a sweet piece of fruit, that fruit goes down into our digestive system, and that fruit is broken down into fructose and ultimately absorbed through our gut and absorbed into our bloodstream as glucose. And that is where the blood sugar spikes are happening. So it's the first thing is to understand number one, that process, that's how that process works, right? That fruit is a source of sugar, and understanding how much of it your body needs or how much your body can take now boils down to what fruits are good for you. So this is the first takeaway that I want you to have, and I want you to apply it to yourself this week. If you're going to have fruit, it's important, number one, to look at the quality of the fruit. Does the fruit have a lot of fiber? And there's a specific characteristic that we want to be aware of when it comes to our fruit, and that is called the glycemic index. We want to look at fruit that have a lower glycemic index and are high in fiber. Those are the two key things that we want to look at. So, for example, if we're looking at a high glycemic index, a glycemic index compares your food to how it compares to pure sugar. If you were to eat pure sugar, how fast would that pure sugar be absorbed into your body to spike your blood sugars, right? That's what the glycemic index is. If you were to eat sugar, let's think of sugar as 100%, right? If you ate a tablespoon of sugar now, that sugar would be absorbed rapidly into your bloodstream. 100% of it would be rapidly absorbed into your bloodstream. So let's say sugar has a glycemic index of 100. Now, if we are comparing the way glycemic index works is now we are comparing different food groups to sugar. The lower the glycemic index is, So the lower that number is, it means the less of it is absorbed rapidly into the bloodstream, right? So for example, if we are looking at lemon, for example, if you squeeze a lemon into your mouth, lemon is not as high in fructose as, say, a banana. So the glycemic index of a lemon is going to be very low compared to sugar, right? It's not going to absorb a whole lot of glucose into your bloodstream, so you're not going to have a very high glycemic index when it compares to sugar. So think of sugar as 100%, and the higher the glycemic index, that means it's pretty close to sugar in how the body responds to it and how the body absorbs it. So we want to go for fruits that have a lower glycemic index. So what I recommend is, when you are choosing your fruits, be aware of what the glycemic index is. Now, the safe bets when it comes to fruits, and the not so safe bets when it comes to fruits, are the safer options are your berries. Berries have a lower glycemic index. The glycemic index is probably in the 20s or 30s compared to sugar, which is, again, remember, 100%. So it's very, very low compared to sugar. And so your berries are also very high in fiber. So berries are a safe bet. When I say berries, I'm talking about strawberries, I'm talking about blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Those are safer when it comes to blood sugar control. Again, exactly how much blueberries you should be eating boils down to, that's a very individualized number, but those are the safer bets when it comes to type 2 diabetes. So think glycemic index when you're trying to pick your fruits. If we look at banana and grapes, those have a very high glycemic index. And so it absorbs very quickly into our bloodstream, and it's very, very close, much closer to that 100% of glucose or sugar. Okay, so glycemic index and fiber are the important qualities to consider when it boils down to fruit. Now, another thing I wanted to point out when it comes to eating fruit is, another question I get is juicing. Is juicing good for you with type 2 diabetes? And my answer to that is no. Juicing removes that fiber, and juicing tends to concentrate all of that fructose, right? You might as well buy fruit juice. So you do not want to be juicing your fruit. You want to be consuming your fruit whole, eating your fruit whole. So again, if you are someone with a type 2 who's type 2 diabetic, or you are struggling with prediabetes, you're trying to make changes so that you can push back on starting medications and you can drive your numbers down, fruit is absolutely something you can have, but you must eat lower glycemic fruit, and you must eat fruit that's definitely going to foster gut health with the fiber and slow that rapid absorption of fructose into the bloodstream. Okay, so that is the first big question I usually get is, can I eat fruit? And the answer to that is, you can absolutely eat fruit. Now, I also answered the second question is, which fruits are good for you? And the safest bet here are your berries. And the other fruits that you should probably avoid are the mangoes, the bananas, the grapes, the ones that tend to be very high in glycemic index and rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, the other things to keep in mind when it comes to fruit is, number one, juicing, don't juice, and then the smoothies are the other. So, for example, you'll have people that mix fruit into a bowl, right? Fruit salad. That's something I grew up with. Fruit salad is something that's very, very done very frequently. The reality is, fruit salads is an overdose. Very likely you're overdosing on your fruit, and that is why you struggle with those very high blood sugar spikes. So, there's a misconception among some people that, okay, fruit is good, it's natural, it's healthy, I can eat all the fruit I want. And when you're struggling with type 2 diabetes, that's not your reality. Okay. And so that is why, again, not everybody's strategy has to be your strategy, because again, your particular goal is your blood sugars. So if you're going to have fruit, you're going to have one fruit. You're not going to have a fruit salad. You're not going to have fruit cut up into a bowl, the bananas, the strawberries, the pineapples. You're not going to have that variety of fruit. You want to focus on having, one serving of blueberries, one serving of strawberries. You might want to combine it with a protein source. So if you're going to have your fruit, why not have it with a Greek yogurt? You put it as topping on your Greek yogurt. So, you want to utilize your fruit as a tool to control blood sugars, but you definitely don't want to overdo the fruits either. You don't want to overdose on the fruit and have too much fruit throughout the day. So that pretty much sums up, my input on fruit. There's so much more to discuss when it comes to fruit, but that is more of an individualized discussion. How to dose your fruit is important as well, but again, very individualized, and that would be a difficult topic to cover here. Definitely something that I'll come back and talk about in the future. If you are someone who is struggling with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, and the things I'm mentioning here, you feel like you've already done and it's not working, then very likely your strategy is off. Very likely you're getting your information from the wrong sources. And in reality, you're probably wasting time. If you're someone who is serious about reversing type 2 diabetes naturally, avoiding medications, avoiding complications, you want to live into your golden years without being on medications and being in and out of the hospital, then strategy is key. The right strategy is key. So I do offer one-on-one services. I offer dedicated coaching to help you naturally reverse your numbers. All you have to do is go on to the link on my profile, click the link tree. There's so much information. There's so many resources there that you can tap into. You can check out the Jumpstart Guide that delves a whole lot more into the foods that you should be eating to help reverse your type 2 diabetes. That is actually a free guide that I have there. And if you're really interested in the coaching, if you're interested in making the best of 2026, getting your numbers right, and painting a brighter future for yourself, then go ahead and book that free discovery call. It's a 15-minute discovery call that we actually cover who we are, what we do, and we get to know you on a more one-on-one basis, and we figure out if we're a right fit to move forward with dedicated coaching. With the coaching that I do, it's strictly for people who are serious, who want the help. So it's not for people who are, in doubt about their abilities to work hard. I have limited time and limited space. So if you are truly serious about reversing type 2 diabetes, I am 100% confident in my strategy. It has worked time and time again if you follow through and you're willing to do the work. So go ahead and book your free discovery call if you are really, really ready to turn your numbers back and to give yourself a brighter future. I welcome comments. I welcome questions. I use questions a lot of the time to as topics in my lives, so that your question can help so many other people who definitely have the same question. So with that, I'm going to close off tonight. If no one has any comments or questions, let me check the Instagram. So if no one has any questions or input, Then I will see you the next time I'm on with, pressing questions that I get from women who are struggling with type 2 diabetes. Until then, I will see you soon.